Well, good morning from beautiful sunny Chagrin Falls. We started out at 9 o'clock with snow. The sun has come out and it's actually a gorgeous morning here in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. Hope you guys are having a great Saturday morning and welcome back for the folks that attended the Kitchen Trends 2021. Today we're going to focus on, my name's John Hall, and today we're going to focus on countertops. What do you do? This is a new webinar, so the folks that have been following me, this is going to be another new webinar series for you. As mentioned at 9 o'clock, there's a lot of webinars coming up. We're going to go all the way through April with double headers. And it's every 2 weeks. You can find that on my website at thehalldesignGroup.com or kitchenedesigns.com. I have two companies and two websites. So let's get started. Okay, what are we going to talk about today in our webinar? We're going to discuss, not in any particular order, we're going to discuss thickness options with countertops. We're going to introduce the countertop materials to you, give you pricing structures, discuss the properties of each material, and how to shop and what to watch for. And then we'll discuss some edge treatments. And naturally, you guys can ask questions as you go, or you can email me. And I'd be happy to follow up with an email with you guys. Okay, let's jump into materials first. Let's talk about all the different materials out there. Now, some of them I recommend, some of them, like concrete, I don't even really talk about concrete because I don't believe, with all the negatives to it, but there's our materials out there today that replace it. So, and the same thing, there's going to be a new one that you guys are going to see, and when you go shopping, which they're really making a big push with it. I'm not a huge believer because of fabrication. What I always tell my clients, I don't want to see you again until I do your bathroom, or I don't want to see you again until I do your kitchen. So I don't want to have you guys have some issues down the road with the materials, and that's why I really want to propose and present to you stuff that I believe in. So here are the different types of countertops. Number one is tile. And we're going to go talk about all these in order. Number two is solid surface, stone, stainless steel, butcher block or wood, quartz, granite, laminate. There's that porcelain, the one I'm talking about. You'll see pictures of that. So based on these, okay, and then one that can be added, let's go back. One that could be added here, again, I don't do it in strategic areas, is glass, glass countertops. But of all of these, I would say probably 90% of the kitchens, you folks are either going to ask me for quartz or you're going to ask me for granite. If it's a bathroom, you're going to ask me for quartz, granite, or marble. Now, some marble's not on here. It could be on here with stone. We'll talk about it a little bit. Or solid surface. Okay, tile. Now, if you go out, of you folks and if you don't know about Houzz, it's Houzz. It is one of the best tools out there when you guys are getting into remodeling and things like that. So you can go out and get on and start gathering pictures. Usually when you see a picture of a tile countertop in a kitchen, it's going to be from the American Southwest, either New Mexico, California, things like that. And when I started in this business, we didn't have quartz. Corian in the solid surface was just coming along. And if people wanted something that they could really set hot things on and that, they went with tile. And you'll notice that you're going to get a beautiful look with it. But let's go through the pros and the cons. One of the big pros, it's heat proof, wipes clean, individuals can be replaced, heat resistant, beautiful rich look, resist moisture. Cons, I hate this word. This is one of there's two words that if you were to say, John, what two words are the most that you really bug you in this industry? One is allowance and the other is expensive. Like what might be expensive to me might not be to you, and vice versa. So, it's such a relative term. Now, let me tell you what gets expensive on that. It's not even as much the tile as the labor to put the tile in. Tile men are very expensive. Hard to keep the grout lines clean. I don't know if we have any people doing bathrooms out there right now, but just so you know, there is a mildew-proof grout. It's harder to lay, it's more expensive, but it's well worth it. So if you ever in a situation where you want something to be the grout to be protected, there are grouts out there today that will do that. Surface isn't smooth enough to roll out doughs or cutting. Okay, and there's a tile countertop. Now, one thing also I'm going to add, you guys that know me know that I keep adding tidbits, is going and there's two basic types of tile, the way it's cut. One is like, it actually may be three. One is hand cut, and that's going to give you a real rustic look. One is machine cut or molded, and what that does is it sort of pillows just the edge of the tile. And then the third one that people really love is called rectified. And so if you're doing bathrooms or if you're doing the tile floor in the kitchen, a rectified tile is actually laser cut so that you can get less than a 16th of an grout line, which is really, really nice. So again, doesn't necessarily need to apply to the countertops. You could use it for your backsplash. You could use it in the bathroom or on the floor. Solid surface. Pros. Chips, dents, scratches can be fixed easily. Excellent color choices. Integral sinks. In 2 weeks, we talk about plumbing fixtures. We'll talk about what an integral sink is, and I'll give you a little heads up in a moment. Unique edge treatments. Cons. Potential to crack with the heat. Expensive. I'm at the end of all these, I'm going to give you a pricing range on countertops. Can tend to stain, but spots can be removed. And there is a Corian countertop. Now, do you notice I didn't use the word solid surface, I used the word Corian. Corian is a leader. It's almost like, Corian is almost like, pass me a Kleenex. Well, Kleenex is a brand. How about passing me a tissue? And that's the same with Corian. Corian's a leader. They probably have about, 70 to 80% of the marketplace on this. I use Corian a lot in bathrooms, in modern kitchens. And one of the reasons why, the biggest thing about the Corian and the solid surface is that we can do, as I had referenced, a integral sink where it can be all molded as one, so easy cleaning and things like that. So that solid surface, you can do a lot of unique stuff with this. You could panel your shower walls. You can go and do really, like I said, unique edge treatment. Like one of the things that we used to do where people wanted more of a organic edge treatment where we can chisel the edges and give us that living, it's called a living edge, with on a wood top, so we can do things like that. One of my favorite examples back when people would be going to the malls and things like that, Auntie Anne's pretzels. How did they get that pretzel the same every time? So they went and routed out a pretzel, inlaid a blue, because that's their logo color, a blue pretzel, and the people that made the pretzels would follow that template. So there's a lot of unique things that can be done with Corian and solid surface. It's a great, great work surface. When I started back in the 70s, I started in 83, 84, everything we did was Corian. And basically it was dawn beige and white and things like that. Now they come into some really interesting colors. And if you want that concrete look, you can get that with the solid surface. And if you're going to go after and look into that, I would pretty much stay with the Corian brand. It's DuPont. Okay, stainless steel. One of the things I get to know my clients pretty quickly, how particular. I remember, and I don't, maybe people get a chuckle or hopefully nobody will be offended out there, but when I give my talks, I would always at the beginning of my talk ask people to raise their hand who's anal. And then somebody complained I used that word anal. So I hit stop. But how many people are particular out there, and how many of my get to know my clients? Because one of the things is then I would start offering materials and appliances and things like that. And even in the design, if you're going to be really, really conscious of certain things. Now, why am I making this little comment about stainless steel? If you opt to go to stainless steel, whether it's a sink, whether it's a countertop, it is going to scratch before you can blink. So you just want to make sure that you're okay with that. It's almost like a living countertop where it's going to do that. But the huge advantage to stainless steel is it will not stain. You get an attractive modern look. And as I say that, I do a lot of work in the Heights, where we would take out stainless steel countertops and all these traditional Tudors and things like that. And sometimes we would even reuse them, in the kitchen. So it doesn't have to be just more modern. There's that integral sink again, where if you buy a stainless steel top, that you could do a integral sink with it. I just talked about scratches easily. Now, this truly is expensive. Where I say it's a relative term. Stainless steel can tend to be more on the expensive side. Can tend to water spot too. And a lot of these properties are going to be repeated in 2 weeks when we talk about stainless steel sinks. A lot of this stuff's still going to come up. And there is a stainless steel countertop. You can see how beautiful it is. If you were with me at 10 o'clock, there's that handleless system on the cabinetry. Butcher block. Pros, doesn't dull knife blades. Can be sanded and resealed. Negatives, cons, porous, unsanitary. Can tend to water damage. Will show knife marks. Now you say, wait a minute, John. Are you sure you're on the right slide here? Now, I put this here on purpose. This is not butcher block, it's a wood top. People don't ask me for butcher block anymore. Now, why is that? Okay, number one, and you shouldn't do it, but people tend to cut on their quartz or on their granite, and you should not be doing it. But the second thing is that people now with sinks, most sinks are going to have an accessory with a built-in cutting board where you could be cutting right around the sink, which is really nice. So they're not going to be necessarily doing a full butcher piece. When I used to do the full butcher pieces, it could be a whole island top, or it could be a corner, it could be just one section. And the advantage is you could sand it down and then reseal it and reseason it, or oil it. But the bottom line with butcher block is the bacteria getting into the top. In Canada, butcher block is outlawed commercially. I mean, it's just not, you just don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. Now, that being said, there's a lot of beautiful exotic woods out there today. You could see here in this kitchen. Now, one of the things, could you see all of a sudden going out to dinner, having a babysitter serve dinner and set down a pot of something or a ceramic dish and slide it? You have to be careful with any type of wood top, and as you go through that process. Quartz, this is a huge one. Great color selection, consistent, heat resistant. You do not need to seal it. Cons, expensive, and there's different levels of it. Will have seams. Not a cutting surface. Now, what a lot of, like my countertop people, what they'll do is with the cutout of the sink, they'll make you a cutting board. So you'll have, so you could still cut if you want to cut on the quartz or something. The only negative, it's going to really dull your knife blades over time. Here's a kitchen in Chagrin Falls that I did a quartz countertop. Um, and quartz has come a long way. One of the things with quartz, every year it gets more and more, uh, you know, visually attractive. But one story I always tell with quartz is, and I couldn't do it when I couldn't offer it to her 10 years ago. But I went to a lady in Shaker, small kitchen, and she wanted marble in her kitchen. And I said, you really don't want to put marble in her kitchen. And she was a southern lady, had a beautiful southern accent. She's probably in her mid to late 70s. And she said, John, why not? I said, because you know what, you just put a glass of red wine on it, and if it spills, you got problems because this you can't seal it to avoid that. And she said to me, she said, well, in her southern accent, well, I'm going to do a test. I'm going to take my windowsill and I'm going to put some red wine on it. And then when you come back next week, we're going to see. So a week later, I ring the doorbell and she answers. And I say right away, I said, let me run and see that sill. And I go there and of course it's stained. And she looks at me with these eyes and said, John, just stained a little bit. But the bottom line is it's stained. And that's why I don't put marble even to this day in the kitchen. Now, why am I telling this story with quartz? Because quartz has come up with in the last 3 years with a marble look that you can't tell the difference. And now, guess what? If she had done her kitchen, if Jane had done her kitchen 10 years later, like right now, we could have done quartz and she never would have that issue. It'd be interesting to see what her countertops look like 10 years later. But that's the advantage of quartz. It has come a long way. Like when we talked about tile last webinar, we talked about the porcelain tiles and things like that. You can get these looks, these natural material looks without having all of the negativity to that natural material. So that's why quartz is so popular today. Like if you want that marble look or if you want, a stone look and things like that. I will tell you this though, from the standpoint of the beauty of if you want the countertop to make a statement, okay, and you want the charisma and you want the depth to it, then you know what you do? You buy granite if you want that. If you want more of a minimalistic look or you want a marble look, more of a subtle type of look, then quartz is really it for you. If you want the most functional countertop that you can put in and say, John, forget color, forget all that. Talk to me function for a second. Well, you guess what? You're putting in quartz. And so there's a lot of different quartz materials. One of the things that has happened, and it's going to be interesting to see now over the next 2 years, I have struggled with quartz, and I promise I never talk politics and I never will, but the reality of the fact is that with all the tariffs that were put on, it really limited the quartz selections over the last 3 or 4 years. More and more now, you're going to see probably more coming into the States. My favorite brand, and I'll talk about shopping in a little bit, is Caesar Stone. Caesar Stone is an absolutely terrific product, and they're represented right in Solon. I can tell you where to go look at all the slabs. Other brands that are out there, there's Cambria, they do a lot of marketing, and there's some other off brands, but LG, things like that. But quartz is really, really what I would say probably 80% of you end up with. Granite, resistant to scratches, durable, heat resistant, resistant to chips, stain resistant, unique. That's where you can really get some beautiful, beautiful finishes. Expensive. This granite could be the least expensive countertop I offer you, or it could be the most expensive. So it all depends. And we'll talk about that when we get to the shopping phase. We'll have seams. Need to reseal it every 15 years. If you guys weren't with me in the first webinar, you want to pick your slabs of your countertops before you order your islands if they're on the heavier side, size-wise, because you really want to try to avoid a seam if you can. This is probably, in 35 years of business, my favorite countertop. Now, one of the things that, look at the charisma to that countertop. One of the things that, and you can get this with some quartzes, but do you want granite? Usually, you guys know granite out there is being polished, and most of granite is polished. But one of the things that you can also do with granite, comes two other ways. It comes honed, Honed, and it comes leather finish. And if you look here, this happens to be a leather finish, and it has a slight luster, almost like a semi-gloss paint. And look at the charisma to that. And then you have the situation where you have the honed, and where it's completely flat, like a flat look. I'm not as wild about that because we have oil on our fingerprints, and when you have like a matte finish, it's going to tend to show the fingerprints. Now, some of the finishes, including some of my cabinets out of Europe, they have a special application put on this stuff where it's fingerproof resistant. That doesn't mean it's fingerproof free, it's fingerproof resistant. So that's something to to consider as you look for your stones and things like that. Okay. So now let's talk about. Let me tell you. After all these years, I have a story for everything. But let me tell you a little story about the difference between the granite and we'll talk a little more about it when we talk about shopping. But about 10 years ago, I worked with a lady, and we found a countertop, and she absolutely loved it. And one of the things was, we found the last 2 or 3 slabs. So it was a beautiful summer day, and I knew Friday I don't know if I was out of town or where I was, but they were delivering the granite and installing the granite. And so she calls me and she says, "John, you won't believe what happened." I said, "What happened?" She says, "The guys dropped the island coming out of their truck, and they have to go back and see what they can do." So I tried calling the granite people. It was the end of the day, and I didn't get through. So Monday morning, I called. I said, "What the hell happened?" And they said, "Oh, the owner didn't tell you?" I said, "Yeah, she said you dropped her countertop in the driveway." I said, "Now we're screwed. We're not going to be able to get any more. That was the last slab." And they said, "Oh, she didn't tell you the whole story." I said, "What's that?" "Well, she went for a bike ride, and she left her bike in the driveway. And when we were backing up, we tripped over her bike." And then I realized, to me, why wasn't this lady upset when she was telling that story, So anyways, we dodged a bullet, was able to find one more slab in Buffalo, and were able to get her kitchen. So the moral of the story is it's a natural stone, and you're not guaranteed between slabs and things like that. And again, when we get to the shopping, I'll tell you how to do this. But if you find something with this, it's not like quartz where you're going to automatically always have a slab that are available to you. So you got to be careful with that. Okay. Laminate, inexpensive, great color selection, can apply wood edging, easy upkeep, impact resistant, will scorch and scratch, cannot repair it. If it gets scorched or scratched, back in the 80s, there was something called a surface saver. And basically what that was maybe you guys had it back then if you remember, but what it was a little glass piece with a hootie rim, and you put it in, and then you countertop cutting board. And so if somebody scratched something, we would just go and put one of those cutting boards in. Cannot clean with abrasives. You got to be careful with this abrasive. I get more and more people every year calling me with the cleaning lady screwed up the glass on the cooktop, or the stainless steel, they used the wrong cleanser, things like that. You got to be careful with all this stuff, what you use to clean these materials. Now you say, "Wow, John, that was not the slide I was expecting. Look at that beautiful marble look." Now, a couple things tell me, or actually one thing tells me, that this is laminate and not marble, okay? It's not the edge because look, we can even bullnose the edges now. It's the sink. See how the sink is self-rimming. You do not undermount sinks. And for people that are new to this, undermounting means the sink is actually clipped underneath. You cannot do that with the laminates. So look at that, beautiful. You know, if you want to be, you know, more cost effective on your projects, and this doesn't have to blend itself just to the kitchen. Let's say the laundry room or somewhere where you don't want to put that kind of investment in, you know, where you can do this. So one of the things, another little side story was I had a guy take a class and he came up to me at break and he said, John, you know what? I can't afford these big fancy kitchens, but my wife really wants a kitchen and it'd break her heart if we can't do a kitchen right now. And I said, well, you do this, go and put in laminates and go and do things like that that can easily be replaced down the road, you know, and then put granite in 10 years later. Anyways, about 2 or 3 years ago, I saw him at a movie theater and he came and he thanked me. He said, I did just that, you know, where he started out with the laminate. You know, and you can see it's a beautiful look. It's not for everybody. If it's your forever kitchen, you know, you may want to go to the direction right now of biting the bullet and going with the quartz or going with the granite. Porcelain. This is one that you're going to be, if you do what I say, you're going to see this product. I'm not a huge, I love the look. I love the theory of it. The problem I have with it is the fabricators don't want to touch it because it is so brittle. But I'm going to go through and I'm going to tell you what it is. If you were in my 9 o'clock webinar, remember when we had mixed materials and we talked about the porcelain slabs and we showed you the backsplash? That's what it is. What porcelain is, it's a very thin sheet of material. It has an image on the top of it. It's not through body, it's just on the top, either looking like stone or looking like marble and things like that, okay? The pros of it, great color selection, heat resistant, chemical resistant, stain resistant, impact resistant, scratch resistant. The cons is the fabrication cost. This stuff is so brittle that a lot of these fabricators are going to charge you an extra slab just in case one breaks, that they're covered. Only skin deep beauty, that's what I'm talking about. Now, where does the skin deep beauty come in? Well, you could say, John, well, you're telling me it's stain resistant, you're telling me it's scratch resistant. What do I care if it's skin deep beauty? Resistant doesn't mean it's not going to happen, number one. Number two, talk about the edges. So now all of a sudden, we got a 1/4 inch slab, we got a beautiful look, gorgeous. But then when we get to the end and the edge of the countertop, what happens? Okay, and there's certain things that we have to do. So remember that when we talk about the edge details. Okay, because how do you handle an edge if it's not finished on a countertop? General cost is expensive. Edge detailing we'll talk about. Okay, look at that. So one of the, and again, we'll talk about the edges and all that, but that is what a porcelain slab looks like. So see the backsplash? You don't have the seams, you don't have anything. Now, can we do that with quartz? Yeah, we can. Quartz can come 3/4. And if you go back and look at my website, you see a lot of backsplashes. Those are all quartz. But this is porcelain here. Okay, edge options. This is going to help us understand a lot of that. One of the places that I like to work with a fabricator is Great Lakes Marble. This is their edge detail, but you can see these are all basic details that you can get, edge details that are standard in price that you can get when you start looking at edges. Now, back in the day, and if you want more of a traditional look, you would have the OG, which is the bottom right. The most popular today that people like is just that double round over, which is over on the left in the middle. But you can see basically all just more simple, understated edge details. Then you can start getting into fancier edge details, which more and more people do not want. They just want something simple that they can clean, and you would find it on this page. They're also going to have some premium ones, your details. Okay, so here are some of the different edges now. Sorry, thicknesses. When we get now looking at countertops, if you're going more of the modern series, countertops, let me just give you the general thickness so you can gauge you. If you're sitting at home right now and you have Formica countertops, they are going to be 1.5 inches thick. That's their thickness. If you're going to go granite or you're going to go quartz, as a general rule, they're 3 centimeters, which is 1 3/16 inches. If you want more of a modern look, then you go with 2 centimeter countertops, which are going to be 3/4 inch thick. If you go and want even thinner, you can do glass or you can do that porcelain. Okay, this countertop here, this was out of a picture that when I was in Germany I took. This is probably a porcelain countertop. You see the edge detail, how it's dark on the edge, and then you see the white on the top. So that's telling me I'm sure that's probably a porcelain top. Here's what happens if you go porcelain. Now, the way it works is you do a mitered edge. So you're going to have your top material and then they miter it, and then you have the drop. The problem you run into with porcelain, remember I talked about it chips easily and things like that. That edge, that top edge corner, you run into a little bit of an issue over time with that. And then also that's where the fabricators have an issue when they're cutting it to get a nice clean mitered edge. Now, one of the things, and I'm going to go back a second, that's very popular that you guys want is this. Forget this being porcelain, but you guys on the thickness, you may want a thicker countertop, and you'll see a lot of that. So that thicker countertop, how do you handle that? Because your material is only 3/4 or 1 3/16 inches. So what are you doing? You're doing what's referred to as a dropped edge. Now, here's where the better fabricators do a much better job. And this is where I really, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage than somebody like me handling something like this. But look at this island. See the vein on the top right of that island. See how it's running off the edge. Look what's happening. It's dropping down. That same edge is on that miter is dropping down, so it looks like the vein is running all the way and wrapping down. Those are all the little details. So when we're looking at the size of an island, you have to tell me, I'm thinking of a thicker countertop, John, and I want a dropped edge, because then all of a sudden I have to add that into the overall width and length of my countertop. You don't want to get blindsided and get caught with your pants down at the end. Okay, there's an idea of a waterfall edge. You don't want to get caught up and have your cabinets ordered and then all of a sudden say, hey, I want a waterfall edge or I want this, and then you run into problems because the slab's not big enough. The waterfall edge, by the way, was popular. Again, this is when we talked about the first one, how I said I'm not a big believer of that word trend. The waterfall edge, in my opinion, is already starting to go on the way out, if not out already. Okay, so how do we shop? It's important. So first of all, let's assume one of the things that you have to be careful, and I did not talk about it this morning, I'm not talking about it today as much, it didn't come into the conversation. This is a white hot industry right now, okay? I'm not just saying on fire, I'm saying white hot. So what I'm doing with my clients, first of all, getting contractors is very hard right now. Getting tile people, getting this, getting that. I mean, there's good contractors that are booking out all the way into next year. One of my crews is already filled for the year. And so what happens is that when we go shopping, you know, My biggest concern right now with my folks is, I have somebody coming at 1 o'clock, to get and take care of wrapping up the kitchen. The minute they're done, we're heading to the appliance store to get appliances taken care of. I was there the other day, okay, with somebody else, and we're looking at dishwashers 3 to 4 months out. We're looking at, so get the shopping process is so important today to get there and get stuff selected, plumbing fixtures, everything. So if you guys are doing something in the next 6 to 12 months, you really, really, really need to be on the ball and getting and working with this stuff. So how does the shopping process with Tops work? So let's say you're working with me, what I was going to say about the difference between a do-it-yourselfer or working with somebody like me. If you go in off the street and say you want a countertop, okay, your turnaround time to get a countertop could be 6 to 8 weeks. You could live 6 to 8 weeks without a countertop in your kitchen. Now, with me, okay, a huge advantage of having a good relationship with somebody, plus paying your bills as soon as the countertop's in, you give them their money, is you get countertops turned around in 2 to 2.5, 2 to 3 weeks. So if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you want to make sure with the fabricator that you're going to talk about, how long it's going to be before you get your countertops back. So let's talk about the players first in this. There's 3 players. Number 1, there's you as a homeowner. Number 2, there is what I call the importer or the warehouse. And number 3, there's the fabricator. So the first thing you do is we want to start looking at material. So we go to the warehouse or we go to the importers. If we want stone, if we want porcelain, if we want certain kinds of quartz, we go to a place called a warehouse. Mott Granite, UGM, there's a place called, for my favorite quartz, the Caesar stone, there's a place called Omnicron, and you can actually go and look at full slabs. Then you go and you look at the slabs. Now, if it's quartz, it's not a critical. If it's granite, what you want to do if you fall in love with something, when you go there, a lot of these places will hold those slabs for you for probably up to 14 days. Because you go there and you don't do it and you don't put a hold on it, you go back again in a week to show your husband or your wife, it's gone, and you say, oh, when you get more in? Well, the run's not the same. It could look totally different. So if you see something you love and you go there and look at it, then you're going to want to put on hold. So let's say you put it on hold. Then the next thing you want to do, okay, it's on hold, but what is it going to cost me? Well, that's then when the fabricator comes in, I send him the plan, and he prices it based on the material that we selected. And then if based on that material cost, then you could say, yeah, I want it, and then they can release it to the fabricator. I will tell you this, if you go, and this is where it helps to have somebody like myself behind the scenes, because this has happened before. If you get a fabricator that's in trouble financially, and he does not pay the warehouse to pull your slabs so they sit in his place, if he's using your deposit for something else, after 14 days, they release it and they sell it to somebody else. So when you buy that, the one thing that you want to make sure is you have a trustworthy fabricator that goes and pulls those slabs and has your name on it at their place, and nobody can touch it but you. That's how important this stuff is, okay? So that's the whole process. That's the fabricators. I talked about earlier, if you have an island, you want to select it before ordering. Now, pricing. There's all different levels. And this is a tough one. Like when clients come in and I give them, and we talk about the money and we talk about budgets and what's my kitchen going to cost. I mean, are we going to talk about a price group A granite, or are we going to talk about a price Z granite? A to Z could be 4 times the cost. Now, when you go lower the ladder and you go to the A's, B's, and C's of granites, the price is way down. But the other situation is they're vanilla looking. I mean, they're just basic speckled, or, there's no quote, charisma to them. So that's something that, with knowing that if you set yourself up for wanting the charisma, then you're going to pay more money. So that's the kind of stuff that the fabricator will need to price. And what I do is, when I go to the fabricator to get an initial cost on it, I say, okay, give me entry level and give me mid-range, and then give my client a range of what it would be. So that's how that works. Quartz, you also have some different tiers, but not incredibly different as you would with granite. And then the way it works on that is that you, let's say that you want to have, it's all settled, you buy it, the kitchen's coming in, the cabinets are set. You can't template until the cabinets are set, because the walls may be off. You may run into a situation. I'll give you an example. I did a job out in Strongsville. All I did was sell the cabinetry and help them consult a little bit. I wanted them to use my fabricator, even though I wasn't doing the construction. I said, you know what? I trust these people. I know, blah, 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 blah. No, they went out somewhere, and I don't know, down in Summit County, and they got the countertops there. Okay, so all well and good. I had to go deliver something. I don't know, a cutlery divider, and I was expecting the kitchen to be done. I go there, the kitchen's half done. And this is everything I said is going to happen to them, and I felt bad for them, but I wish they would have listened to me. The countertop company, mismeasured, and they didn't template it right, and they didn't have any more of the material, so they were trying to scramble on what to do. And I think what they ended up doing was having to replace all of the countertop, not just the one part that was misdone. So templating is ever so critical that they get that right. And when you template, you want to make sure you have the sinks there. You want to make sure you have everything there in order to do that. Getting samples is easy with quartz. It's easy because a lot of the manufacturers have samples that we can take and look for tile, things like that. With granite, you're not going to have that application, because it used to be 20 years ago, they would take out a hammer and they would break a corner of the slab, and a chunk would fall off, and they give it to us. They don't do that anymore. So in that situation, what we do is, and it's a good trial, a good, testing and checks and balance system, is that we go and get our tile and take it to the fabricator and making sure our slabs have been pulled and they're there, and then we can hold the tile up to the slabs. So there's a lot of different things that we can do. So you can see here, I know I'm getting a little detailed on this, but this is something, if something goes wrong with a job, it's usually countertop related, and you just want to make sure you dot all of your I's on this countertop stuff. Okay, so that's it. As I mentioned at the 9 o'clock, I have a design guide. If anybody's interested in it, I'd be happy to get one out to you. And we're going to have a webinar in a couple weeks. I know we have plumbing. I don't know what the other one is. You can look on my websites for that. If you have any questions on anything, please do not hesitate to email me or call me if you need any resources or anything else. Okay, other than that, we're going to end it, and we're going to go on and enjoy our weekends. And the clock is ticking until 3:05 tomorrow for the football game, and let's hope we have a good result for Monday. Okay, thank you for attending. Bye-bye.